Thank you, Elliot, for putting this beautiful evening together to remember our dear friend and loved one, Margo. Chana Miriam, but Yosef Tzvi Aleh Shalom. I am sure I'm not alone in feeling taken aback that 10 years have gone by since her passing. Margo Aleh Shalom was the rock, as I often like to call her. She was a woman of tremendous strengths, both physically and spiritually, and her passing left a tremendous void in everyone who knew her or were touched by her kindness. She lived life to the fullest. Margo loved her family. They were always her number one concern. She loved spending time with them and going with them on special trips. She was a quintessential partner to Elliot, and she was so incredibly proud of each of her children. I remember one night towards the end of her illness, we were both up in her hospital room. It must have been around 3 o'clock in the morning. Margo had a difficult time falling asleep. She was worried about her family, in particular about her kids who were so young at the time. I remember telling Margo that she is right there inside each one of them. They each have her inner strength. That is a quality that was so characteristic of Margo, especially throughout her illness, and it is something that is so evident in her family. I remember telling Margo that some people may live a long life and still not transmit to their children as much as she has in her short time. Margo loved her friends. She was a true, non-judgmental friend. She was always there to listen and lend her support. She gave careful attention to the little things that made those around her feel special. She would often surprise me with a bagel and a muffin from my favorite bagel store and bring me clothes and books for my kids. When my kids had grandparents and special friends day at school, it was always Margo who would step in and be that special friend to my kids. She would always come with a lovely gift that made my kids feel super awesome. Margo loved children. She loved her academy, and she loved helping the school grow and develop. There was no job too big or too small for Margo to participate in, to help the school and its students. Margo loved sports. She was an avid tennis player. I was always amazed that she had the strength to play a competitive tennis match and win, despite having received chemo treatments a day or two before. She didn't let her illness stop her from doing what she loved. Margo loved doing chesed. She always looked for opportunities to help others, especially people who others may overlook. I remember going with her to chemo treatments. She would always size up the room and then park herself next to the patient who needed cheering up the most. She would start up a conversation, and by the time the patient was done with his or her chemo treatment, they were clearly Margo touched. About a half a year after Margo passed away, our family made Aliyah. Although I was very excited to finally fulfill a lifelong dream, it was very difficult for our family to leave the Allswangs. But Margo had encouraged us to make Aliyah when she was alive, and she carried on supporting me throughout the major transition once we got to Israel. I can give you countless examples of Hashgacha Pratis moments that I've personally experienced that let me know without a doubt that Margo was watching over me. Gila and Adina, you know what I'm talking about. But I want to share just one. Before she passed away, Margo and I were talking. Somewhat out of the blue, she brought up my son. A few months earlier, we had found out that he has dyslexia. A few days before she passed away, Margo gave me a knowing look, and she said to me, "He's going to be okay." I thought this was a bit unusual because we weren't talking about my kids at that time, and it had been a while since I'd mentioned anything to do with my son's dyslexia. Well, shortly after making Aliyah, it became very clear to me that kids with dyslexia and other language-based learning disabilities were falling through the cracks in the Israeli educational system. This is a national issue, and something needed to be done. One thing led to another, and I ended up doing something about it. I founded a nonprofit organization called Kol Koreh in January of 2013. We've been able to help hundreds of children with dyslexia. We provide assessments, workshops, advocacy, and interventions. We have a high school reading program for girls and the first high school class for boys. We have even created a music video, educational videos, and the first of many audiobooks. Kol Kore doesn't only help my son to be okay, it helps hundreds of other kids with dyslexia too. And I know that all of this is thanks to Margo. I have no doubt that she's behind the scenes moving this along. It's Margo's way. She wasn't going to help just one child succeed. She was going to help all of them. Although 10 years have passed, I miss Margo every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of her or am reminded of her in some way. We don't know God's ways or why Margo Aleh Shalom was taken from us so early. But seeing things from my little vantage point, I have no doubt that she is still with us, watching all of us, and being a Melitzat Yosher for us up in Shamayim. Yizchar Baruch.